Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of the You Can Exhale Now podcast. Today, I am having Bryn Brown, a business coach, onto our podcast. Bryn will be talking about that work-life balance, that elusive work-life balance that we all strive to achieve in our lives. And hopefully she will share lots and lots of really great tips with us today. Welcome to You Can Exhale Now, a mindful living podcast for the modern pace, hosted by Lesia Liu. This podcast is for anyone who wants to get more out of life without the burnout. Because when you learn to take proper care of yourself, you have more energy, a more positive outlook, and more gratitude for life. And because you cannot reach your goals if you're tired, overwhelmed, judgmental, angry, and feel sorry for yourself. Each episode, you will learn actionable strategies for self-care, mental health, productivity, better life-work balance, and happiness from coaches, therapists, and experts. Stop holding your breath. You can exhale now. Choose to be a more authentic version of yourself than you've been in a while. Bryn, welcome to the show. And why don't you tell us more about yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me. So I'm a business coach. I came from a corporate background. I've been in sales and business development and business strategy for, in some capacity, for over 20 years now, which makes me feel a little old. And so that's my professional background. I did sales and in a more traditional sense, and then I moved into nonprofit fundraising. And I think when we're thinking about work-life balance, when you work in the nonprofit industry specifically, things can get out of whack really, really quickly. And so I launched my coaching business on the side as sort of a passion project several years ago, and ended up taking that full time 2 years ago, which is really exciting, and really have created the balance that I've really wanted and had been searching for so long, which is amazing. So that's my professional background, but that's not all of me, right? So I'm married. I just had my very first baby, a little girl. I'm really excited. She's 3 months old. Thank you. Thank you. So that takes up a lot of my time. I've just come off of maternity leave, which is really nice to be back in the swing of things. And we've got a couple dogs. I'm hoping they'll be quiet. I've sort of hid from them, so hopefully they won't make their presence known, but we've got a couple dogs running around here too. And so that's my life.
Awesome. Sounds really fun. And it sounds like you have been able to achieve or get at least really, really close to that work-life balance we all strive for. So why don't you tell us more about, what does it really mean? I'm sure there's lots of different definitions and every person kind of sees it differently for themselves, but in the nutshell, what is work-life balance and how we can try to achieve it or at least come really close to it in our own lives?
Yeah, I think it's always a work in progress for all of us, right? So you're totally right. There is probably a million different definitions because everyone is different and we all have our own values, and the things that we prioritize are going to be a little bit different from person to person. So what that looks like for you might be a little bit different than what it looks like for me. Generally, what I hear is, people typically want more time with their family, and they feel oftentimes like they have to sacrifice that time or social time with friends in favor of building their career or their business. And so that's the big thing that I typically hear, right? Of like, how do I have more time doing what I love, but not sacrifice the money or climbing the corporate ladder or the position or whatever, the success in my business or my work. So I think the first step to really creating work-life balance is to, one, define that for yourself, right? What does that look like? Now, for me, It's very freedom focused, time freedom, financial freedom, right? I want to be able to spend time with my family, as my family grows. I want to be able to take a maternity leave if I need to take maternity leave, or, you know, take off for the weekend and not feel like I have to be connected all of the time. When I was in corporate, that was a little bit more challenging to do because there is expectation around the ability to be connected all the time.
Yeah.
So once you start getting really clear on what is it that is missing, what are the things that I'm always saying that I want more of and that I'm sacrificing, the next thing to do then is to put some boundaries into place, and figuring out what those boundaries are within the constraints that you might have with your job or with your work. And then the hardest part, I would say, is holding to them. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds more of, there's kind of way by addition, and there's also a way by subtraction. So um, could you speak more about the sacrifice? I think we all, in our lives, we all feel like we're sacrificing something to get something else.
Mhm.
And usually it has a very negative connotation, right? Basically, you cannot have it all. But can you speak a little bit more to the freedom that maybe comes with accepting that sacrifice and getting really clear on your priorities?
Yeah, and I think there's a perspective shift that can be made around that, because it's easy to get in that place of, oh, I have to give up this one thing in order to get this other thing that I want. I can't have it
Mhm.
all. And if we can shift our perspective around that, it doesn't feel so negative, right? So there's an analogy of, you should be trying to run towards something rather than running away from something, right? So if we start to think about, well, if this is a sacrifice, I have to stop doing that, right? If we're trying to lose weight, for example, I have to stop eating carbs or I have to stop eating sugar, rather than choosing to have more healthy foods, right? Like I want to eat more salad because this is the bigger goal. It shifts the priority, or the perspective in your mind, to a much more positive association. And that can make things feel better within us almost immediately.
I think that's a great way to look at it. So tell me more about the importance of, having clear action plan on how you want to achieve the work-life balance. Because again, for a lot of us, especially working in corporate environment,
Mhm.
that work-life balance seems a little bit elusive. So
Yeah.
what are specific steps and plans we can create for ourselves to achieve that balance?
Yeah. So, one of the most impactful things in terms of just specific actionable items is around technology. We're so connected, and it makes it really easy for us to be over connected. I know when I was working, my last corporate job in nonprofit was international work. And the challenge for me was that many of my clients and accounts that I was working on were international. They were in Africa, and they were in India, and they were in Indonesia. And so when I would come home from work, I would be getting emails from them starting the next day. Right. So it was so easy for me to think, oh, well, I have to respond to them right now. And so when I started thinking about, okay, this has me on for 12, 15 hours a day, and I'm not getting paid for that. Right. Like, the understanding is I have a salary and I'm getting paid for this 8 or 9 hour workday. Right. It, it's not reasonable to expect that I would continue to be on. And so again, internally, there was a little bit, we have to start looking at the mindset shift and the perspective shift of, is this serving me, and is it serving my company or my work? Right. So if I am always overextended, am I going to show up as the best employee or the best business owner? Am I going to be doing my best work if I'm burnt out? And if the answer is no, which it probably is, right, we need to start thinking about, okay, what boundaries can we put into place? So for technology specifically, having frank conversation with your boss or your clients around, not being available at a certain time, whether that's weekends or evenings and weekends, which would be amazing. um, just not being available, and then not being available, right? Now, some people, and I'm a type A person, so I get it, if that's the way that you operate and you want to be available and you want to do some work, and maybe it's more quiet in your house or you're more productive at 10 p.m. or whatever. I totally get it, but you can schedule your emails to not go out until the next morning. So then you start to set that expectation that you're available during business hours, and that's it. Even if you're actually working a little bit extra. And then I really love putting in a no technology on the weekend rule, right? And it's really, really, really hard to not jump on Facebook or Instagram and start scrolling, but really disconnecting can completely change how you feel that quality of time with your family or with your friends or whomever, that you start to fill your cup a little bit more because we're not connected digitally. You're not checking your email. You're not scrolling and posting, right? And there's ways that you can do that too, like taking the app off of your phone so that you actually have to physically log in order, or putting the limits. If you have iPhone, you have time limits that you can put on your phone for certain apps, right? For social media or for games or whatever. So that you're really limiting that time and honoring this disconnected period in the week. So those are a couple of things that I find work really well.
Yes, I love it, love it, love it, especially the disconnecting part, because sometimes it's not always about work, like you said, sometimes maybe we come from work and we mindlessly start scrolling through Instagram or Facebook as we are having dinner with family, or as we're, I don't know, watching TV late at night. And it definitely does not help with the quality of time you're getting out of it outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we start talking about work-life balance, it's like, well, I just don't have the time to be with my family. And when we start really looking at where we're spending our time, and you add up those moments, because you can run a report and look at it on your phone, how much time do you spend on social media or games or email or whatever, it's kind of appalling, it can really surprise
It's
you.
terrifying. It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
And when I get my weekly report, if you have the iPhone, it comes in at the weekly report on Sundays, and it says your screen time was up or it was down, and you spent an average of X amount of time. And I remember before I went on to maternity leave, I was spending at like 7 hours or something, 7 to 8 hours of screen time on my phone a day. And when you start to realize that, it's kind of like, wow, no wonder I don't feel fulfilled when I'm with my family, because I'm not fully present, not really soaking that in. And I made some intentional efforts. I did put limits on some of my apps. I did, take a Sunday. I picked Sunday as my day of the week, and I completely disconnected, and it wasn't easy, right? And I would open the apps and then I'd have to close them. And I cut that number in half for the week of my screen time. And I know it can be, yeah, thank you. Well, it's gone back up a little bit. And when you run a business and you're on your phone for work, it can skew things a little bit, right? But being intentional about where you're spending the time is key, because if we can't, as humans, we can't now women can better than men multitask, right? However, if we can't really, right? We can't be fully present with our family or with our friends if we've got a screen in our face.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a really good point about the quality of time, and the presence, because a lot of us tend to, almost blame our work for whatever bad habits we're perpetuating outside of work.
Right. Yeah, it's an easy scapegoat, right?
Absolutely. So, and you touched on an interesting point, as a business owner, and especially in the beginning, as you're just starting to build your business, things can get rough and challenging and time intensive. So how can you still ensure that work-life balance as you're building a business or as you have this massive growth in your career? How can we then be a little bit more mindful of keeping that balance?
Well, it's tricky. It's tricky because there are different seasons, right? And whether you're launching a business or growing your own business or you're working, in corporate, you're going to have different seasons where times are just going to be busier. You're going to have bigger projects, things are going on, and you're going to have to devote more time to work. Again, it's all about finding the balance, and that's a work in progress. So one, if you're trying to put some of these things into place and you find that you're not as successful as you want to be or you feel you should be, ease up on yourself, right? Ease up on yourself. And don't beat yourself up, because it's going to ebb and flow. We're going to have different seasons where we can be more with our family and less involved in work. And other times when you're, say you're building a business on the side, you're doing the whole side hustle thing and trying to get something off the ground. You have to work full time and then build a business on evenings and weekends. There's not going to be a lot of time left over.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's hard. So knowing that it's a season, this is temporary, can sometimes be really helpful for us mentally to see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? To know, okay, we're moving towards something, not away from something, right? We're moving towards this business that we're growing or this project that we love doing. And that fills us up. And it's creating some of that balance that we're looking for outside of our job or whatever, right? So this fills us up. It lights me up. This is a good thing. We're moving towards that. And it's not going to be this busy, this crazy forever. It's temporary, right? So at a certain point, for example, as a business owner, if things start to regulate, they start to, the momentum is built. You don't have to work so hard to get results, or you shouldn't, right? If you are, call me, we'll put some systems into place. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that can just help immensely. The other thing is to really, start thinking about where can you carve out that time, even if it's 20 minutes here for a hot bath, or you want to do a digital detox on Sundays or whatever. If you say a certain period of time is going to be that time that you're really spending devoted to your family or to social life or to yourself or whatever, really honor that and get other people involved if you have to. The accountability is so hard to just be self-accountable. So if you have someone else that you've committed to, you've told your family, you've told another person, I'm doing XYZ with you, or I'm going to be doing this for myself on this day, to make sure that you do it and have them checking in with you and hold you accountable. Because it's easier if you have that external, this other person, right? It's like, hey, wait a minute, you said you were going to do this.
Absolutely, yeah. So would you say, some of this balance is more about perception than reality, in that, for example, if I am working a full-time job and I am trying to build a side hustle or build my own business on the side, clearly, work-life balance is skewed in one direction. But so is it more about perceptions, I guess, like what works for you versus what's really happening? Because there has to be still some type of like healthy boundaries. If I'm working 90 to 100 hours a week, and it seems to be working for me right now, my body did not start physically and mentally to break up just yet. Are there like healthy boundaries, or is it really just all about the perception in life?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the mental part of it is, it's like 80% of it, right? So again, how are we seeing this? Is this something that we're really building because we're passionate about and it fills us up? Because if it's something, if there's so much in your side hustle that you're really passionate about, it doesn't feel like work, right? And so then if we're thinking, oh, but I'm working all the time. Yes, you may be working all the time, but you're still filling your cup with the thing that you're passionate about and doing something you love that doesn't feel like work. And that could fall into this, home life balance rather than work balance side of the scale, right? So if you're looking at these two like a scale, and yes, I'm spending all this time and it is, I'm using air quotes, right? Quote unquote work. Yeah, maybe work, but we might be able to move it to the other side of the scale and say, this is more of like outside of work because it's heart centered, right? This is soul work that I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too. Right. Yes, it's work. And then again, going back to knowing that it's a season. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's 80 to 100 hours a week right now. And it's a season. This is temporary. And then there's the other side of it where we can say, is this really serving me? So to kind of step out of it all and look objectively and say, am I okay with this overall? Because if I'm really not okay with it, something's going to have to give. And we have to start looking at what is that, right? Is this corporate job the right job for me right now? Do I need to be finding something else? Do I need to negotiate, something different with my employer so that I can have more freedom to do this other thing? Or is it time to take this side project full time if that's the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it time to start shifting one other direction? Because we can't sustain that for long periods of time. Physically, there's going to be some cortisol changes, right? There's the biochemical changes that happen in our body when we're too stressed out and we're not getting enough sleep and we have way too much caffeine in our system. It's just not sustainable physically and mentally and emotionally. So stepping out of it and saying, okay, is this the season or is there no end in sight? And is this serving me? Is this what I really want to be doing? That can sometimes be the harder question. To really get objective and honest with ourselves and say, maybe the day job isn't serving me, or maybe the side hustle isn't going anywhere. Maybe it's not what I really want to be doing with my free time. How can I scale it back? Or maybe it is what I want to be doing with my free time, but how can I create systems and delegation to make it all run, but require less of me?
Absolutely, yeah. And you actually touched on a really important point that I wanted to ask you about. So, role of passion in work and life balance, especially for business owners and entrepreneurs. Um, some people get really, really passionate about something, and that's, there's that project that they keep talking about, keep thinking about. Maybe that's all they talk about with their friends or their family. Maybe they go with these ideas to sleep at night. Passion is great. I believe that passion is what moves us forward. But how can we, again, keep that balance where, okay, I'm really passionate about this project or this business idea I'm working on, yet if I cannot go to sleep at night because I'm so excited, that probably will not work for too long either. So, can you speak about the role of passion and how to kind of sometimes offset it a little bit so you can allow your mind and body to relax and rest?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, if you have something you're so passionate about that you can't sleep at night, congratulations. Congratulations, because there are so many people in this world who would
Yes.
kill to have something that they're so passionate about. And I was one of them for a long time before I discovered coaching, as someone to hire, to be coached and then to do the coaching. Like I would get so angry when people would say, well, just do what you love. Right. And I'm like, well, if I knew what I loved, I would be doing it, but I don't
Thanks,
know.
you're not helping.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't help me. So if that's you, where you're like, I just can't sleep at night because I'm so excited, then congratulations. Cause I would say you're in the minority and it's wonderful that you have that. So there's two sides of the brain, right? We've got this really logical side, and then we have the more creative and emotional side, right? So our logical brain can't shut off if there's no plan. So the first thing, if you're there's all of these ideas and the creativity is flowing and you're really excited and you can't sleep at night, creating and having a concrete plan can really help to start to quiet that so that you can rest and relax, because your brain now knows it's okay. Tomorrow I have XYZ and I'll get it done. Right. So what I find is when we're in this place of just total creativity and the ideas are flowing, it's hard to have a plan. So getting with somebody, talking to somebody, doing it yourself, if that's the way that your brain works. If you're more on the creative big picture side, having somebody in your corner that you can rely on in terms of a mentor or a coach, or somebody that has been there that can say, here's the steps, the plan of action. I have seen that in my practice with my clients really because I tend to work with people who are very heart-centered and emotional about it. And they are so passionate, right? Then it's like, but I don't know how to make this happen. And then once we started to say, okay, here's step 1, step 2, step 3, it's like, we can take a deep breath. Like, oh my gosh, okay, this is actually going to happen. And everything starts to calm. Not that the passion is lost. It's just, it starts to calm that rational side of the brain and say, okay, there's a plan. We know what's going to happen. I can do this.
Absolutely.
Does that answer your question? I'm not
Yes.
sure.
Yes,
Okay.
it does. And it actually brings up another really good point. And you kind of mentioned it yourself. I think for a lot of people who start their own business and start, coaching or anything like that, we are attracted to time freedom, financial freedom. We believe that, if we only had this much more time or this much more money, we would be the happiest person alive.
Yeah.
And yet, on the other side, a lot of us do not think that this is truly realistically possible. There's all these mental blocks around money, how much can I charge for my knowledge? How much can I charge for my services? And how much, how can I build this business and then basically take myself out of it to travel and see the world or whatever, How do you help people to break through those blocks and achieve the goals and dreams and freedoms they are after?
Yeah, the inner work is the hardest. And if you're a business owner or an aspiring business owner, I will tell you there is no better path to self-awareness than running your own business.
Yeah.
Right? You know this. It brings up all of those fears. So when I work with people and we're talking about the inner work, there's a couple of things that need to happen. So I'm a type A person, and I'm very practical and logical, but I have this spiritual flair to my work, right? I feel like it's the foundation is that you have to understand these universal laws and then work with that, what some people consider to be woo-woo, that metaphysical, the unseen side of things, the energetic, right? So when I work with people, we lean into both sides of those. How do we calm and understand the logical side, and then also work with the energetic side? So say it's a fear of money. The first thing that we need to do is understand what is that basic fear that's there, right? It's some fear, a fear that I'll never make enough, or that I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. And it may not be about the money itself, right? This enoughness could come up. So what is that? I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. This will never work for me. I'll never have that much money, right? So we have to understand and sort of dig a little bit to say, okay, what is at the core of all of this? Then we need to start to speak to, I'm touching the base of my skull here. I do this often. This reptilian brain, right? This is the basic part of our brain that's at the base of our skull that says fight or flight, or freeze, or placate. These are actually all the different ways that when we are afraid, that this fear comes up, and we're either going to fight, we're going to run, we're going to freeze, or we're going to just start people pleasing all over. Right. Yes. So from the logical side, I help my clients understand what's going on in their brain. And when we can step outside of the fear and say, oh, I understand why you're here. Maybe it's oh, I know this one thing happened one time when I was 7 years old, and now I believe that, or not, right? We don't know why, but we sort of acknowledge the fear and let it come up and not push it away. Carl Jung teaches what we resist persists. So if you think about, again, universal law, and we get into science, right? It's equal and opposing forces. So if we have a fear that comes up and we're in total resistance of it, of like, oh no, I'm rejecting that. Like I am good enough. I am smart enough, and we're sort of fake it till you make it. That fear is going to keep coming back louder and stronger, equal and opposing forces, right? As loud and as strong as you're trying to fake it, it's going to keep coming back. The way to, what we want to do is transmute the energy, change the energy, is to accept that fear and tell our brains, oh my gosh, I know why you're here. Thank you so much for alerting me to this scary thing, that this could all crash down and people will figure out that I'm an imposter and I'll never have any money, right? It's like you welcome that feeling and then it can soften because we're not in resistance to it. So with the inner stuff, it's acknowledging, okay, we have to become aware, the awareness of it. What is this fear actually saying? And then we have to welcome it and sort of recognize when it shows up, of like, hey, there you are, and move into a place of gratitude for it. Like, thank you for coming and trying to save me from making this huge mistake. Then and only then can we shift the fear into, we want to transmute that energy into something that works for us, right? So now here it is. We're thankful for it. We're grateful for it. It can soften. We're not in resistance. And thank you for showing up and telling me this. Here's what I need you to do now, right? Like, I need to be excited about this new thing because it's going to work out, because things have always worked out. And we lean into some of the experiences that are more true rather than the fear of, yeah, one time things didn't go our way, so we created this belief that I'm not good enough. But the reality is I'm doing it and I'm trying it, and I'm looking for confirmation bias, right? I'm looking for the ways that are reinforced. Well, I do have clients. I did make sales. I did get that job. So I think this might actually work. So let's just try and be excited. So we're changing that energy because it doesn't go away. We're just changing it. Like, I hear you. Thank you for being here. Here's what I need you to do now. Does that feel like helpful, that flow?
Yeah, I am a huge fan of, psychotherapy, psychoanalytics, with a side of woo-woo and spirituality. I think you put it very well.
Oh, thank you. And I find what's helpful, and it was helpful for me to understand what's the concrete science behind this and what's the energetic, metaphysical, woo-woo side of it, right? Because it's easier, and I tend to get I tend to attract clients who maybe lean a little bit more, yes, they're creative, but they believe in the energetic, but when they have the understanding of, oh, here's why it works and how it works, they're more likely to use it, and we can actually make progress with those fears,
Yeah, for sure. Love it. Absolutely love it. And so I guess the last step of, identifying your fears, being aware of them, is that action, right?
Yes.
And taking the positive action for yourself. And you've touched on one of the biggest problems, I think, with creatives, entrepreneurs, business owners, is that imposter syndrome, right? Like, well, I am no good. I don't know anything. No one will pay me. And when they pay me, they will find out that, I'm just a big, huge fake and it's a hoax and stuff like that. So, how do you move away from that? I think especially, I would say, I feel like females are struggling more with that. I think it stems from maybe low self-confidence, but it also comes out from that fear of failure, right? So what are the actions we can take to help to prove ourselves that we are not imposters, and that we are knowledgeable, and that we are absolutely brilliant, and just increase that confidence in ourselves.
Any action. Anyone who's worked with me knows I say this all the time. Confidence is a result of action, not a prerequisite.
Love
A
it.
result of action, not a prerequisite. So when it comes to imposter syndrome, it's like, well, I'm not good enough. Who wants to listen to me? No one, everybody else is already doing it, or somebody else is already doing it. What do I have to offer? That starts to quiet when you get one client or one sell, and then the next one, it quiets a little bit more. And the next one, it quiets a little bit more. Right. So just by doing anything and just putting it out there for one person, it can really start to build that confidence. But if we don't take action, we're going to live in that place of fear. We have to, and whatever you need to do in order to take that action, again, have a friend or an accountability partner or a loved one who's cheering you on, or a mentor or a coach. Have someone in your corner that's holding you accountable to whatever action you say you're going to take. And it doesn't have to be big, right? Maybe it's just that you put up that website, or you do that, you record your first episode of your podcast, right? And you don't post it anywhere, but you're just taking that one action, and then it feels a little bit better, and you feel a little bit more confident. Because a lot of fear comes from the unknown. Like, I haven't done it before, and so it seems really scary. And then you do it, and it's kind of like, okay, well, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was. And we build a little bit more confidence. The other thing that I find myself reminding people often is that while, yes, somebody may be doing it, or somebody else is teaching what you're teaching or doing what you're doing, that's great, but no one can ever do it like you, right? So there are people out there waiting for you to offer what you have to offer in only the way that you can offer, right?
That's beautiful.
Yes, they're waiting for you. And who are you to deny them the help or the service or the product, right? Why would you do that? To deny them if it's going to help them? How can you say no to that? So do your thing in the way that only you can do it, and offer it, because people need you.
Yes, I have to agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, a lot of it comes from taking the smallest actions too. For the longest time, I was afraid to record a Facebook Live, or, to come out and record my voice, because I hate hearing myself on the recording. And yet, with every new podcast or every new video, it gets a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So I absolutely love that idea. And then also, just taking the small step. Just last week, I don't know if it's just February getting on my nerves or something like that, but I felt really drained and really kind of not hopeless, but there was this like emotion of hopelessness, even though everything was going as usual, as normal for me. But I just felt like this, like, meh, and did not want to do anything at all. And it just felt really like helpless and hopeless, and everything felt so gray. And yet taking small step into the direction of like, okay, what do I want, how do I want to come out of this, and just taking that next step, taking 15 minutes for a small action that will move me towards where I want to go and how I want to feel. And by the end of the day, I felt so much better, so much more in control of my life by just taking small actions. Like, if I have the choice to take this action and I just did it, then maybe everything is not so hopeless. Maybe I do hold the power to change this perception around for myself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Bryn, I think this was a great podcast. I think you've shared so many great ideas, and hopefully listeners will take an inventory of their own life and their work-life balance, And hopefully this will help them make a couple of small baby steps into the right direction.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so grateful for you and the work that you're putting out into the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, you can get in touch with Bryn at her website, brynbrown.com, and you will find all the links and all the social channels where you can connect with Bryn in our episode notes. So definitely check those out. Bryn, thank you so much for your time. It was a really, really great episode, full of gold, full of value. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've learned a lot of new strategies. Be sure to check out the notes below this episode for additional resources and tools mentioned in today's show. I would love to keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts and takeaways with me on social media channels wherever you are. And do not forget to tag me. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next episode. If this podcast has helped you even a little bit, please leave a review and subscribe so that we can help spread the message together.